What's going on, guys? Make sure everything's set up right. And we are good. Just waiting on people to come in. Oh, wow, there we go. What's going on, everybody? Oh, Idaho, NTV, what's up? Minushika from Colorado, and Christian Canner from Georgia. What's going on, guys? So, I just wanted to come on and do a live and hang out, talk about the case. I was watching a video earlier and I had to stop it because I thought I want to watch that with people on live, right? And it's two of my, two good channels that I watch a lot. I don't want to say favorite because they're not my favorite, obviously, but they're good. I think they're good information most of the time. I think, their opinions usually align with mine, sometimes different. This is a case where one of them is different. And then even the person that agrees with me, I disagree with them on some things. It's the opinionated idiot. That's a show. That's not, derogatory. And the drunk turkey show. They had like a live stream thing together yesterday or the day before. And I watched part of that, but then they got this clip they put out today. And in the clip, they're talking about the evidence and whether it's convincing or not. And I just really wanted to, go through it and give my opinions on what they're talking about and what they're saying, because this is the same vibe I get from the comment section, which is what a lot of people are thinking, right? And for me, when I talk about the evidence and I'm saying, oh, well, this looks bad, or this is, not really that much, or whatever I'm saying about that particular piece of evidence, what matters is the totality, right? Like we've talked about that before, the totality of the evidence at the end. It's like you can explain away something that any little thing, you can explain it away with excuses or reasons why it could be different. But when everything compiles together, it puts together a much more, coherent story. And it's hard to say, okay, well, yeah, this looks this way, but it was really that. And this looks this way, but it was really that. And this looks this way, but it was really that. Coincidences only stack so high. If you've got 10 different things that maybe could be something different, but all together, they paint a very clear picture. That's the totality, right? So I want to go to this clip and see what you guys think about it. Before we start, though, let's read some comments real quick. All right. I am glad all of you stopped by, too. I mean, this is crazy for me just to think that you would even be here. But Dolphin, saw you last time from Atlanta. Monique, hey. Florida here. Hello, everyone. South Florida, true. Statesboro, great work. What is that? Minnow, North Dakota. How is Bryan commented to the girls? You mean connected to the girls? Well, he's not, other than the rumors of like following on Instagram and stuff, which, I mean, that doesn't say anything by itself. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, it doesn't mean anything that a single guy followed some pretty college girls who live in the same town, you know. But once they get murdered and you have messages where he messaged them a bunch of times, and supposedly he was at the restaurant that they worked at a few times, and then he had pictures of them saved to his phone, and he liked every post they posted, then that starts to tell more of a story of like, hey, maybe this wasn't just a single guy following the pretty girl in town. That's exactly what I mean by like the totality of the evidence. But let's go into this clip. Let's watch this. And we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Our conversation with Bryan on the Opinionated Idiot channel on his live last night. Link is in the description.
I don't know, man. I've been saying it all along, and people just keep coming at me. I think the evidence is very, very strong. I think the evidence is very, very strong.
See, I think it's him. I don't think it's very strong though.
Really?
Yeah.
So riddle me this then. Why?
All right. So the opinionated idiot, Bryan, we're going to refer to him as Bryan, right? I didn't know his name until I just saw it there. But Bryan believes that the evidence is really strong around, against Bryan Kohberger. And I agree with Bryan. I believe it's getting stronger and stronger. I don't buy into the assumption that we have so much more evidence that we just don't know about, because you can't assume that. You can't assume somebody's guilt that way. So what we have is looking stronger and stronger the more it trickles out. The problem, though, is that there's a gag order. So the only way evidence can come out in this case is against Bryan Kohberger. We have to remember that. Any reason that it might not be him, any part of his alibi, anything that he has to say or somebody has to say on his behalf that has any information from this case, they're under a gag order and they can't speak. So it's kind of a situation where you've got Big Brother, the government, and they can paint a narrative, but you can't. See what I'm saying? That's why the gag order is a problem for me. But from what has come out, it looks pretty damning to him. But Daniel from Drunk Turkey Show, he doesn't think so. We're going to figure out why.
Well, first, all right. Well, let's play this game. You tell me what evidence you think is strong, and I'll tell you why it's not.
Sure. I think number one, DNA. The sheet, the DNA. And I heard you earlier. I went into the house. The knife was there. I lost it. That angle could be thrown out there. I think DNA is strong. I think all of the the timeline of where his car was lined up. And
let's take it one spot at a time. So the DNA. You said
a story, Let's see what he says about it, though.
DNA. I don't know
how much.
I don't know.
It was described as a speck of DNA.
Okay.
Now, would you believe that a speck of DNA would be? Would you rather? All right. What would be more likely to find a speck of DNA on something once handled or something used in a crime like this? Only a speck. Handled, right? So that was forgotten. Okay.
All right. See, that right there, that's the issue for me. He's assuming that Bryan Kohberger handled this sheath without care. Just, oh yeah, I'm going to have it. I'm going to take it back with me. It's not going to matter if my DNA's on it or not. But we don't know that. He could have cleaned that as well as he thought it needed to be. He could have thought he had all his DNA off of it. When he committed the crime, he was wearing gloves. He was probably trying to shield his DNA from getting out into the scene or into the place. So probably long sleeves. I mean, it was winter anyway. We know he had a mask on, right? We know he had black clothes, but they were warm. They had to be warmer clothes with snowfall like we saw. So a lot of his body's covered. So if he wiped that sheath down before he left the house, there's not going to be a bunch of DNA all over it because he's holding it with gloves, right? But the sheath has a button snap. We went over the button snap. I've got a picture of it on the video. It's on a few thumbnails. If you don't want to watch videos, you can just scroll back and see the button snap on the knife sheath. If you reach under and open that button sheath, right, your fingertip is going to rub against that metal piece. That could be easily forgotten. If you snap that knife in place and then wipe the sheath down, or if you take the knife out, wipe it down, then snap it back in, it could leave his DNA on there. That just being a little bit of his DNA doesn't mean that he's not connected to the knife. Now, I've made the argument myself that he could have only touched that sheath one time. It could have been somebody else's. They could have showed it to him. He could have opened it. They could have wiped it down later and his DNA just be there. But you have to be able to sell that. And you can't sell that when you have so many other ties tying you to the crime. If it was only that DNA is tying him to the crime, that's the only reason, that would be one thing. But the DNA is just a small part of a lot of other reasons. His phone pings, his social media stuff, his the connection to the girls, right? The DNA was the first connection, but it established a lot of other connections. And then we have the car on video there, and that's connected to him. So that connects him to the crime another way, right? Like he just so happens to possibly have the same car that the person who committed the murders was driving. And he also just so happened to touch that person's knife. You see where you start getting convoluted there? Like, it's not to say that they're wrong in what they're saying, because I've made these same arguments for piece by piece of the information. But as more information starts to come out, it starts to fill in those gaps in the story. And then you get to wondering, okay, well, is it him? Now, I want to make sure I put this here too. Let me add this ticker at the bottom, because anybody that we're talking about, they're innocent unless they've been proven guilty in a court of law. They have to be presumed innocent under the law. That doesn't cover opinions, right? Everybody's entitled to have their own opinion. And my opinion on the way the evidence has been looking is that it don't look good for Bryan. It looks like he's being, he's going to be found guilty based off the knowledge that we know so far. Now, don't go so far as to assume there's so much more that we just don't know about, because that's not usually how this works. Every once in a while, you'll have a case with some evidence that you hadn't heard about that seems to be damning. But the government, they usually let it leak out when they've got the big bombshell evidence against somebody. Like if they had the knife, if they had the murder weapon, and they didn't tell anybody, that's far more rare then they can't find it, right? Anyway, let's get back.
What's the next one?
So I think we have to look at the forensic DNA maybe of his phone. And the thing that I think that could be really strong in locating, pinpointing, go to the Murdaugh trial. We saw very in detail of the accelerometer on his phone. They were literally detailing to every foot or inches that he was walking or where he was. I think that you're going to see a lot of that in this case as well. And I
agree with that. I think you're going to see a lot of information off the phone, more than what we know about, because the phone records that much information. Now, we don't know what that might be, the steps he took, whether he was in a hurry, in a rush, what he was doing before the phone turned off, before the murders happened, like whether he seemed to be moving around, getting stuff ready. I feel like you're going to have a lot of that come in the case too. But Bryan right here, he's about to make a point that I strongly disagree with, and I'm going to explain why. Even though I agree with him that the evidence is strong, what he's about to say here is just not right.
That's not even a word, forensical. That forensic DNA of his phone, I think is going to really pinpoint of where he was prior and to on the night in question. I think that's really strong, the timeline.
See, I'm not entirely sure. So with the pings that they have, one, this is a rural area in the mountains. And so there's valleys, there's mountains, there's things of that nature. So that's going to affect the accuracy of the pings that are involved. Number two, I'm not even sure they're going to be able to use them. You have to have the search warrant that they obtained to get it.
All right. So I was a little ahead. It's not where I disagree with Bryan yet, but we're getting there. Let's still disagree with Daniel here. The terrain is not going to make those phone pings and those signals recorded by the phone itself a problem. The phone's going to record the data regardless of whether it has a signal or not, if it is on. If the phone's not on, it's not going to record anything. If the phone's not getting signal, it won't record the pings to the cell towers, but it will record whatever he was doing at the time. And that's the evidence that Bryan was referring to before we went into this spiel.
His data for his phone was off of the fact that he drove a white Elantra that the police department came out and stated that he that stated there was 90,000 or 20,000 or something like that Elantras in the area, and the fact that he is of average, 5 foot. Well, Dylan described the person as 5'10".
Okay, that's a little bit of a misconception too. 23,000 Hyundai Elantras in the area. It's not in the area. I mean, the area's barely got 23,000 people. There's 23,000 Hyundai Elantras in the spec that they were looking for available in a very huge area, like the whole United States or the whole West or the whole Midwest to West. Not just, in Moscow or in Idaho. There's way more than 23,000 Hyundai Elantras, but white Hyundai Elantras, there's about 23,000 of them.
About 6 foot and 185 pounds. And the only description they had was the fact that he had he had eyebrows and a white Elantra. And so that's not enough to go and violate somebody's rights to utilize their personal cell phone data to figure out where they were at, in my opinion. And
right, but he's leaving off that they have that car, that Hyundai Elantra, in the area, driving around, up and down, looking for a place to park or turning around or building up the nerve or whatever he was doing. They have that car, that white Hyundai Elantra, doing all that. Then they have an eyewitness. As credible or not credible as she may be, it opened the door. You had somebody point the finger out and say, this is a description. And that description has led to the arrest of somebody who has a whole lot of other points on them that has been found since that can lead to this, right? So even if the witness gets thrown out, that doesn't get rid of the credibility that they gained after that. Like once something happens, it happens, right? Like with the Alex Murdaugh trial, they should have never let the financial crimes come into the murder case, because after that, nobody was looking at him as innocent until proven guilty. They were looking at him like a low-down sleazeball. And you're going to believe that he did anything if he's going to steal from his dying friends millions of dollars, steal from people where it's pocket change to him, but it's life-changing money to them. You're not going to look at that person and say, oh, no, he's not capable of this. So in Alex Murdaugh's case, the financial crimes were supposed to be motive, not character, but it was used, and the net result of it was a character assassination. He deserved a character assassination, but not during a murder trial, because his financial crimes, the only one that they were saying was even tied to this was the fact that the HR woman at his lawyer's office was, I'm getting into Alex Murdaugh now, let's not go to that, but he was being investigated for one crime where the law partners thought that he was hiding money for the boat case people wouldn't find it, when in reality he had been stealing millions of dollars for the last decade. And that opened up, once that happened, that messed them up. But once it's allowed in, you can't take it back. You can't forget that, right? And that was the problem there, and that's the problem here. Dylan's witness testimony might be worthless. They might come back and say that she made the whole thing up, or didn't, or was involved, or wasn't, or was asleep the whole time, or was hallucinating, or was drunk, or was high, or say she was in some psychotic state of mind and her testimony can't be used. There could be a lot that comes from that, but what all happened after the fact doesn't go away if that goes away. See what I'm saying?
So, one, I'm not sure if that's going to be used, and two, the probable cause affidavit itself says that the reliability of those things aren't there. In fact, on I think it's page, 16, maybe 15, it states that he connected to a tower in Moscow, but was not believed to have been in Moscow on November 14th. And so those pings are probably not going to be as accurate as they would be maybe in other parts of the country.
You're crushing me here.
Sorry, we We've gone over these theories hundreds of times.
The problem, like I said, is trying to pick apart and only do one thing at a time, because you just can't do that. That's not what the case is built off of. Life doesn't happen in a vacuum. The evidence isn't being shown in a vacuum. Crime doesn't happen in a vacuum. These things all relate to each other. Now, you can say, okay, well, yeah, he left his house that morning, but I mean, it's a college town. People are out at that time all the time. Okay, well, he was headed toward Moscow. Well, I mean, there's two towns, they're two college towns right beside each other. He could have been going there for anything. He could have been going to meet a friend. We haven't got to hear his side or nothing, but he was going in that general direction. Okay, well, he turned his phone off on the way. Why'd he do that right before the murders took place? Well, his phone could have died and he, put it on the charger, but the charger wasn't charging and he didn't notice. Okay, well, why did the phone come back on right after the murders? Is that just a coincidence? Well, I mean, he probably fixed his charger and then his phone popped back on. You can go through stuff like that for days. But when you say he left his house, he headed toward Moscow, he turned his phone off, the murders happen, his phone comes back on, he's on the other side of town, coming back toward his house. He goes back to Moscow around 9 a.m. that morning to look and see what was going on, goes back home. Then when they go into his car, they find all this stuff. When they arrested him, he's in the kitchen trying to cover his DNA. All this, when you start laying the whole story together, which I didn't do great just right there, but I'm not trying to go through the whole story. I want to talk about what they're saying. But when you do lay the whole story out like that, it's harder to deny. That's why it's the totality of the evidence.
One thing also, he did turn his phone off.
I'm glad you said
Murdaugh turned his phone off.
I'm glad you said that. So I did some research on that. The accelerometer in your phone will continue to track data as your iPhone is off. So even if it's off, the battery is dead. And what will happen is when your iPhone is either powered back up or charged, that data will still be, it will now launch into the phone. So I actually talked about this on my show last night. So even if the phone was off, or even if the phone died, or, it still would record data. It still would have.
That's not true. It's just not true. If your phone has no power source, it's doing nothing. If you have your phone in airplane mode or something like that, where it's still getting power to everything inside the phone's still operational. It can still track your steps. It can still do all the things you need it to do. But if the power's gone or the battery's out or whatever, the phone can't do anything because it doesn't have a power source. It's not activated. That's the part that I was saying I disagree with Bryan on. That's just not accurate. It was a misunderstanding, I'm sure.
Data and steps.
Well, the data that it had before, but it wouldn't be able to record the data while it's off.
Correct.
It would, yes, it still would. I can read real quick. I'll read this to you. So just food for thought. Digital DNA. Does an iPhone record steps while in airplane mode? Yes. Steps are counted using an accelerometer built into the phone. It doesn't require any external connection.
Notice he said airplane mode.
This is very important in the Murdaugh trial, as you can show, Alex. They showed where it was.
But what about off?
What's that?
That's an airplane mode. What about an off?
Exactly.
It still would is in off as well, because
no, it
will
wouldn't
continue to record data in motion. That's what an accelerometer is. It's actually internal into the phone, programmed like that.
Huh. Send me that. I want to look at that.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that's wrong, like I just said, you have to have a power source, right? You can have an electron. Okay, back in the day, burner cell phones, right? Remember burner cell phones or prepaid cell phones? If you wanted to get rid of that phone, or, the whole trope of that whole thing was take the battery out and throw it away, break the phone, whatever. But the phone's not recording you unless it has a power source. The battery is the power source. You can make the argument that if you just turn the phone off, that it would still technically have power, just not be activated. But if the battery dies, the battery doesn't have power going to the devices, going to anything in the phone to make it run. It wouldn't make sense for them to have that battery being used while the phone is powered off to run the accelerometer or anything else, that wouldn't make sense because it wouldn't save your battery. Your battery would still be being used. Anyway, it doesn't do it. I looked it up just to double check and make sure it does not.
Then we can look at the white card too.
Sure.
If we were to look at his pings, and if you were to say that they're accurate, you can't look at some and say that they're accurate and others that they're not.
Right.
Correct.
He was pinged at his house at 2:42. He was on camera 2 miles south at 2:44. Do you think that in order?
All right. So going a mile a minute. Think about this for a second, because that's what he just said. He was at his house at 2:42, and then he was 2 miles away at 2:44. So you have to say a mile a minute. Now, also those seconds matter, right? Because those seconds could either be dead on 2 minutes or almost 3 minutes, a second away from 3 minutes. See what I'm saying? But given it that it's exactly 2 minutes, then you have 60 miles an hour he would have to be traveling to go 2 miles in 2 minutes. Think about it. That's not that fast. We know he was driving erratic when he left the scene. So who's to say he didn't speed on his way to the scene?
To have been in those two places, he would have traveled through Pullman at 60 miles an hour uninterrupted. Now, the unique identifier that they're putting to Bryan Kohberger is the fact that he had a white Elantra without a front license plate. And they suspect that he didn't have a front license plate because he had Pennsylvania license plates, which did require a front license plate. And so if there's two vehicles out at 2:42 and at 2:44 that are white and colored four-door that match the same description, both without front license plates, and that puts in question if Kohberger was even ever in Moscow or...
All right. So thank you, Tom N, for the $2. He said, I think the evidence in Clarkstown or nearby. Which evidence? What are we talking about? Elaborate on it, and I'll make sure I find your comment, because I have no idea what you mean by that.
If there was another vehicle out there that was out there as well with the same type of vehicle. The same thing also goes with the fact that he is seen or believed to have left somewhere around 2:47. I think it was, no, 2:57. But he doesn't get seen until 3:26 heading westbound on the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive. I'll show you this. Let me
Sure.
this.
I'm struggling to understand what the relevance of what he just said is.
Yeah. All right. So I have all these pings marked up. This is Pullman, Washington. This is where this is his apartment complex at 2:42. He's there. I believe it is at 2:44. He's seen heading northbound. I think it's like at 2:57. He leaves here and isn't seen until 3:26 a.m. according to the probable cause affidavit. Sure. Heading westbound on Indian Hills Drive. Problem with this is he's heading westbound. This is where the victim's house is, but he lives west of Moscow. Yep. So why is he heading that direction? Second thing is they see him leaving that area, and it is assumed that he came to Moscow from there at 57. So that's 29 minutes for a 10-minute drive, maybe 15-minute drive. So where's the other 15 minutes? Now, the other thing is...
All right, so I don't want to let this just play because I'm not just trying to show their content. I just got interested in what he was saying there. I didn't never get this far earlier. I turned it off. But what he's saying is that when he left his house and he got spotted, 30 minutes later, that he was headed in the direction looking like he was going back to his house before the Moscow murders ever happened, right? But we know that he's also spotted multiple times after. So he didn't go back to his house. He's saying there's 15 minutes unaccounted for that we don't know about. And it doesn't matter. That I can't make sense of why that would matter, that there's 15 minutes there. I mean, it could lead to where he was or who he was talking to or something like that. But it doesn't justify or it doesn't exonerate him of being in the on Queen Road and King Drive and King Road and all the little areas they went over in the affidavit that his car was here, turning here, right before the murders took place. So yeah, he was doing other stuff, but this is kind of, to me, this is like asking, well, what did he do earlier that day? Where did he go? Well, how does that mean that he went there? It has absolutely nothing to do with it, because we know he left his house and he went and did some other things and then came there. That's what it looks like to me from this. I'm ready to see what you guys think about that, because I can't figure out why it would matter that, well, it should have only taken him 15 minutes to get here, but it took him 30. We didn't see him from here to here, so we don't have information on him. But see, at that point in time, his phone was still on, so they have the forensic evidence from the phone to tell that story. So that should tell us where, all the way up until the phone turns off, right?
Seen leaving at 420 southbound on Williams Drive. He is picked up by when his phone is turned on at 4:48 on the highway near Blaine. Now, from the victim's house to Blaine, Idaho is only 10 minutes away. From 420 to 448, it's 28 minutes away. So there's an 18-minute gap there. Now, he's seen leaving at a high speed, it's a high rate of speed. So he's probably traveling at a faster rate than the speed limit. And I would assume that he would continue to drive at a higher speed than the speed limit from throughout this entire time, whether it be adrenaline, rush, the whole 9 yards from what he just did, getting out of there.
Gina Gonzalez, thank you for the $5. I really do appreciate that. Hey, so excited to catch a live. I love your logic. I wish you would have covered the Murdaugh trial. That's all. Love your show. Thank you. And I did a little bit. I was listening to the whole trial all day at work. That's just the only thing I was hearing. So I listened to the entire trial. I just didn't make a lot of content on it, because when I did, people just seemed like they didn't want it. But thank you for the $5. I appreciate it. And we can talk about it in here if people want to. I'm happy to go over the Murdaugh case, because I don't feel like the prosecution proved him guilty, even though I, understand he probably is guilty of a lot of things. He admitted to being guilty of a lot of things. He seems like a deadbeat, sorry, low down. He's the stereotype of that Southern lawyer, that smooth talking Southern lawyer. He is exactly the stereotype. He's going to rob you. He's going to steal. He's going to take your settlement. His best friend was literally on his deathbed, needing money for bills, and he stole his money. So he's a terrible person, and he deserves to be in prison for the rest of his life. But I don't know that he did indeed murder his wife and son, because I don't feel like they proved that. They just proved how terrible of a person he was in general.
Where did he go for 18 to 20 minutes that it took him that long to get here?
I think he was probably hiding the murder weapon, probably getting rid of the evidence that he had. See, my whole theory this whole time is that when he committed these murders, I don't believe that was the only clothes he was wearing. I believe he probably took off whatever outer layer he had that would have had the DNA on it, along with the knife, and put it in some kind of waterproof bag or something to keep DNA from spreading into his car. And then he went and he put the items wherever he was going to get rid of them. I don't believe that he still had the items once his phone turned back on. And we're trying to account for what happened to this other 18 minutes from the time he left the murder scene till his phone came back on. It should only took 10 minutes to be there. It took 28. Well, yeah, because for 15 to 18 minutes, he was hiding the murder weapon. He was getting rid of evidence. He was probably scrubbing himself down, Cloroxing himself, whatever he had to do. I don't know. I've never tried to go murder somebody and get away with it. So whatever you need to do to try to wash off the evidence, that's what he was doing for 18 minutes. Hiding, burying, throwing off, finding a river, finding a spot nobody's going to go to, burning the clothes, whatever he had to do in those 18 minutes. Because we have to assume, even though we can see that apparently if he is guilty, that he made a lot of mistakes that point it right back to him, he's still a very educated, intelligent person. So he's gonna have planned some steps. Or even if it was a sporadic, lost his mind right there while he was doing his normal stalking behavior and wanted to go in and ended up doing everything that happened, his education, his intelligence would then kick in. And he would be like, okay, well, I need to do this. I need to get rid of this. I need to make sure this isn't here. And he would start trying to cover his tracks, right? But we all assume that he pre-planned it anyway. So he would definitely have a route scheduled, a place to get rid of everything scheduled. Like, hopefully, if you're that educated and you are going to do something like that, it seems like you, I don't want to say hopefully, that was the wrong choice of words, but it seems like you would do it, right? It seems like if he thought he could get away with murder and thought he could go and kill these people, he would have a plan for what to do with the evidence, how to make sure that it didn't point back to him, even though he failed. Gina Gonzalez. I want to say Gonzalez so bad now every time. Gina Gonzalez. Oh, I can't speak today. Yes, I feel the same about Murdaugh. Are you going to go through the hundreds of new documents on Kohberger? I'm going to go through them. I'll find things that are interesting, but I'm not going to go over them on this live. When I go over documents, I like to print out documents that I'm going to go over on the stream. That way I can read them. Well, on video, I'm just starting the live stream, but that way I can read the document in my hand rather than on the screen, even if I'm going to show it to you on the screen. It's just, I'm weird, you know? But thank you for the other $5. I really do appreciate it.
You should be his defense attorney.
Yeah, we've been going through this series over and over, man. So we.
All right. So that was that. I like all those guys on that thing. I'm not trying to hate on none of them or anything, but my main takeaway from that is what I've been screaming. Yes, you can pick apart the evidence one piece at a time, but it doesn't happen one piece at a time. If you have overwhelming evidence pointing to a thing, and you can go through and nitpick each little part of it and try to make it not fit because of maybe this and possibly that, and it could be this and it could be that. But at the end of the day, it's going to tell the story because it's the totality. It's all of it together. You would have to say that all these things happen that look like Kohberger committed this crime, but all of them have some alternate explanation. See what I'm saying? That's what I mean when I do say the totality. Tom N, I appreciate the $5, bud. If he is the guy, I think he ditched the weapon and clothes in Clarkston before he went to coffee shop in Albertsons. Did he? Going up. Hold on. I'm too slow at reading. I don't know how to do the pop-out chat thing yet. Like, it never works for me. I can pop it out, but it never keeps the chat going. So, I don't know what's up with that. Did he buy first aid at Albertsons? You know, I'm not sure, but that's okay. I get what you meant now. The evidence in Clarkston, the clothes, the weapon, all the stuff. He ditched it somewhere there during that 18 minutes, right? Did he buy a first aid kit at Albertsons? I don't know. I know they found a receipt yesterday, or it came out that they had found a receipt maybe for a K-bar knife. Now that we're done with the video, I can read chat a lot better. So let me know, did they find a receipt for a K-bar? What was that about? Because I haven't got to look at it yet. Miss Mew, I really do appreciate the $15. Your channel makes my soul sing. Wonderful and brilliant. Well, I really do appreciate that. I'm just a guy, you know. I'm just talking. I'm giving my opinion. I'm seeing the way I see stuff and talking about it. I don't want to upset anybody or make people mad, but there's no reason somebody should get mad over me expressing my opinion if they're going to express their opinion back to me. I welcome it. And one thing I want everybody to understand is I don't think that I come from any position of authority. I'm not over here saying I'm an expert on this or I'm that. I'm just saying what I think. if you think something different, if you can see flaws in my way of thinking and my logic, then point them out to me. I'm happy to be criticized, as long as it's not hateful. Don't be hateful. Just be like, hey, I think this, or I think you missed this or missed that, or hey, you're not adding this into the equation, whatever. And I'm happy to go back and forth. As a matter of fact, hopefully that we can get somebody to come in and chat. I can share the link, somebody can jump up and we can start a little panel or whatever going to discuss the case. That's something I would like to do today. Let me see if I can make this pop out, because I am really annoyed that my chat, I got my laptop sitting over here, my other computer here. I ordered a second monitor to make this a lot easier, but I don't have a Thunderbolt cable. So once the monitor got here and I couldn't hook it to my Mac, I didn't want to switch computers from living room for the HP in the living room into here just to use the two monitors. So I ordered a Thunderbolt cable. So hopefully by Monday I'll have two screens and this will all be a lot easier. Right now with one, it's a little more difficult. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm sorry. Let's go. Let's see if I can get to the comments so I can have them on this screen. So open this up. Mute it. Well, it just doesn't want to cooperate today, I guess. Let's see what we can do. See if I can get out of theater mode on this thing. There we go. There we go. So much better. All right, let's read some comments now. Heather Mosher, most true crime channels are not reading the legal documents correctly at all right now. Yeah, I know. I see a lot of people like make a mockery of what's being said and what's happening. Leah's story. I'm assuming you're responding to somebody there when you say he went to his doctor, no evidence he had injuries. I don't know if you're talking about Bryan Kohberger or Alex Murdaugh. So gonna skip that one. Bones Hemlick. Running trails are incredible around Moscow. That will come out when we learn about 12 pings prior to the murders. So you think he was on running trails around Moscow, exercising, getting his miles in, and that's why he was in the area, not to stalk the girls? But I guess the question would be, why didn't he go back after the murders had taken place? And why was he acting with such suspicious behavior that he had been acting in, including, when he was arrested? Why would he do that if he was innocent is the question, right? That's not my question, because it's none of our business, but that's the question that's asked. Why would that be different? If you're going to say he was at running trails and that's what he was doing, why did he stop going? Oh, yeah. Leah's story. I always theorize. Like, I think of this as thought experiments. When I start taking in content about the murders, if I find some new information out, I start just I call it thought experiments, where I just start thinking and rambling. I'll record myself talking about it and then go back and listen. And some of the stuff I say makes no sense at all. That's why I'm pretty hesitant about live streams, because once you say it, it's there. And even if you realize, no, that's stupid, that's wrong, you can't take it back. But, if I say something that is wrong, I promise I'll acknowledge it's wrong if I'm wrong. But yeah, I love to theorize. I love to go through the thought experiments and come up with well, maybe this happened or that happened. The thing with it though is I don't want to theorize in a way where it turns into fantasy. Like I want to theorize from the facts, the what we know. We can't assume that there's extra evidence. We can't assume that, it, you can't assume things happen that we don't know that happen. So when I theorize, I try not to start like telling a story like that theory that I posted about the whole drug angle. To me, that person, they might have had some things correct in that theory. Everything might have been wrong in that theory, but that theory turned from what they believed to a story they were telling halfway through. It's like they started getting into their imaginations, right? Because they're telling you what this individual was thinking. There's no way they know exactly what this individual was thinking. So I try to stay away from stuff like that and just go into like, well, maybe it was this. He could have done that. It's possible that this happened, but never directly, I guess. I never want to say directly, this person did this or this person didn't do this, because I don't know. I think the K-Bar receipt finding is speculation at this point because Bryan's Amazon account was part of a warrant, but it's not definitive. Right. I mean, even when they had his apartment, right? When they searched his apartment, they took the Amazon Fire Stick. The only thing I could get that they would take that for is because they want to see what his, shopping history is, maybe his viewing history. Like, what was the guy who murdered his wife? And Bryan, another Bryan, but he was searching how to get rid of a 115-pound body, and his wife was 115 pounds and missing. And the dumbest one that I've ever seen, but maybe they were looking for that type of information. But would you order a murder weapon from Amazon? I have to feel like if you have any intelligence at all, you're not going to do that. You would like go and pay cash at some, backcountry knife store or something. That way your information isn't on file if you're planning to use it. Now, maybe he bought it and just had it, but if he bought it intending to use it for that, I don't feel like he would do Amazon, but maybe they did. If he did, that just shows that you can be stupid and educated at the same time. Easy E. Do you remember law enforcement said BK was in his bed and now they arrested him in the kitchen? No, I don't remember them saying he was in his bed. I remember them saying they went in and arrested him in the middle of the night. I remember a lot of people were saying like, well, the reason his pictures looked like they did, the reason he looked so rough is because he had been in bed and they woke him up. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they went in and arrested him between like 3 and 4, right? For me, it doesn't seem that strange that he might have already been awake, but I go to work really early. So when I wake up early all the time, it doesn't surprise me that somebody else might have already woken up. He could have, instead of just being up all night and then getting up that morning or in the middle of the night, going and messing with the trash, he could have had been asleep and already woke up and was trying to do whatever before his parents woke up. One comment that I kept getting though, and on that last video about that, it blew my mind because when I was talking about how when the police come in the house, he's in the kitchen wearing rubber gloves, picking his trash out of the family trash. And people kept saying, well, he was OCD. Well, he was a germaphobe. And then other people started saying, well, I wear rubber gloves to take out the trash too. I wear rubber gloves when I do this and that. Oh, he was wearing black. Oh, he's definitely a murderer. And it's like, no, but you can't be so naive to be like, okay, well, he was just organizing his trash in the middle of the night. And by organizing, taking out his personal trash away from the family trash and putting it into other people's garbage cans. And then they never could find anything with his DNA on it in his trash. Think about that. And a lot of people say, well, why didn't they go get the trash from the other garbage cans? Well, they're not allowed to. You see, as simple as that sounds, it's illegal. The police can't come take your property or take anything from you without a warrant. So for them to get a warrant, they would have had to go turn into the judge that Bryan Kohberger is putting his trash in this person's garbage can at night. And then the judge would have to sign off on them to have a warrant to go search that garbage can, because otherwise they're going through those people's trash. You see what I'm saying? So it's not as simple as like, oh, we saw him put it in there, we're just going to go get it, because they got to have a warrant to search through those people's trash, not just the warrant they have to search through Kohberger's parents' trash. I hope that makes sense, but it's legit. I used to be a garbage man when I first graduated high school. Worst job I ever had. Very hard work. And we didn't have like the pretty little arms on the truck that dumped the can. We were just like riding on the back, 1980s style, picking up cans and dumping them, getting like 16 tons worth of trash a day. Whew, that was rough. Anyway. Whew. I appreciate the Easy. Anyway, let's see if we can find some more stuff to watch. Let's check these comments over here, because this one stopped updating for whatever reason when I popped out the chat. I can't figure that one out. Why, when I pop my chat out, it just keeps, giving up on me. All right, let's find something. What do y'all want to talk about? Is there any particular part of the case that you guys would like to go over and get my opinion on? Like, any part of it? Because I feel like I've made the point that he's innocent until proven guilty. He hasn't been found guilty in a court of law. We can't assume that there's more evidence than what we've been told about. It is wrong that the gag order exists, but the government keeps letting information leak out when the defense are not allowed to do that. That's Big Brother. That's the prosecutor being able to paint their narrative without the defense being able to try to paint theirs. So that is wrong. Went over him being arrested in the kitchen, wearing gloves, picking out trash. I got sidetracked in that, but I did get sidetracked there, didn't I? See, that's what I'm talking about. I have ADHD. So when he was in the kitchen, the people commenting, they kept saying, oh, well, just because he had rubber gloves on, it wasn't a big deal. But it's like he was picking his trash out and putting it into individual baggies. If you have any reason whatsoever why he would do that, please explain it to me. Because the only reason I can come up with is that he was wanting to make sure that his DNA was not matched to that on the knife sheath. Because once they found DNA on the knife sheath, they didn't have him in the system, so they couldn't match it to who it was. That's why they ended up having to match it to his father's DNA to say whoever's DNA this is 99.9% the son of this man, because they couldn't find Bryan Kohberger's DNA. And then they go into the house to arrest him, and he's pulling out any trash of his and putting it into individual baggies. And he had been observed throwing other trash away in other people's garbage cans where the police couldn't just go get it. And they couldn't find DNA in his. So give me a reason why he would do that. That doesn't say that he was trying to cover up his DNA or stop them from getting his DNA. It has nothing to do with being OCD. It has nothing really to do with wearing the gloves. The fact that he was wearing the gloves is normal, because if you're going to go dig through your trash, I would hope you would put on gloves. But the fact that he's in there with gloves on, digging in the trash at that time of the night while everybody else is asleep, taking out anything that has his DNA on it, is prevalent. It matters. It really is suspect, no matter which way you think about the case. It looks bad. And if you can't admit that, then you're just arguing in bad faith at that point. You're not really trying to come to the truth. You're trying to tell a story. The paperwork, see, it's just so much paperwork, and I haven't even looked into it yet. I heard it was like 700 and something pages of stuff was released. I need to go through that. I need to at least get it together to be able to see it. But we can, let's see if let's see if somebody has read it yet. Because I like to do videos reading information, but this is News Nation. This is Brian Enton. I like Brian Enton. I don't like News Nation. I don't care that much for Ashley Banfield. I hate Chris Cuomo. But Brian Enton, he's a good guy. Let's check this out. Bear with me. Still learning.
You put all of this evidence together, and there's a lot of it. You read all of it out like that. What does it tell us about Kohberger? Let's bring in Robin Dreek, retired FBI special agent.
Dolphin, I appreciate it. I saw a video that the skin dog was on October 21st, the same day Brian got an email from WSU that he wasn't meeting expectations. Coincidence? Yeah, I mean, it could be just a coincidence. That is something that I could say, okay, yeah, maybe that's a coincidence, but you can't just ignore it either. You know, you should at least consider the idea, like maybe not. Is there any reason to believe that he would go and do that, or any evidence pointing to the fact that maybe he did? You know, a lot of people when they found the hairs in his apartment, right? When they found the hairs, everybody was thinking, well, it could be Kaylee's dog, right? Kaylee and Jack's dog. Maybe he took a hair from that scene. What if that hair so Dolphin?
Head of the Counterintelligence NCE Behavioral Analysis Program, and Katie Cherkosky. She's a criminal defense attorney and a former federal prosecutor. Thank you both so much for being with us. Robin, I want to start with you. You heard me list out all of those items, everything we know, and it's come in bits and pieces, so it's interesting to lay it all out like that. Obviously, a lot we still don't know, but based on that, what do you make of Kohberger's criminal profile at this point?
He always strikes me from the very first time he was arrested that here's an individual that has studied this from books, and he has taken all his knowledge from research and no practical experience. And so it looks like he put the...
Do you guys think he has no practical experience? I just completely fudged that up. But do you guys think he has no practical experience? Because I feel like he had possibly done this before. If he's guilty, if he did this, maybe he's done it before. It seems like a big step to go and take out 4 people the very first time you do something like this after studying and doing the things the way he's done it. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people have said things like, well, he really was shy and in a shell and overweight when he was younger. And then this one summer, he changed his entire mindset, started going to the gym, lost the weight, got more confident, became more outgoing. Things like that, to me, make me feel like maybe a trigger happened in there. That could have been the first time he did it. It seems to match up with the old logs of him posting online about, you know, the crazy stuff we saw. when he was 14, 15, 16. And that falls into the same time period that they were saying that, where he's going through all the visual snow stuff starting to happen to him, and he's posting about it. And he gained confidence somehow. Possibly he was, getting a adrenaline power rush from the thought of he could take somebody's life, that he could get away with it, that he was good enough, that they were inferior to him. Because that's what most of these psychopaths feel, that the people that they're killing, they're inferior. Like Elliot Rogers, right? They act like animals. I'm going to slaughter them like animals. That's what he said, in the manifesto. So they do operate from a sense of, oh, I'm better than this person. That's why they deserve it. And when they pull off the murder, it reinforces that idea to them that they were better, that they won. What's up, Harsh Reality? I appreciate you stopping by. I'm learning, so bear with me because I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just hanging out.
And a former federal prosecutor. Thank you both so much for being with us. Robin, I want to start with you. You heard me list out all of those items, everything we know, and it's coming in bits and pieces, so it's interesting to lay it all out like that. Obviously, a lot we still don't know, but based on that, what do you make of Kohberger's criminal profile at this point?
It always strikes me from the very first time he was arrested that here's an individual that has studied this from books, and he has taken all his knowledge from research and no practical experience. And so it looks like he put together this project of his, and he gave himself an assignment for murder. And so that's what all this evidence looks like, is that he accumulated all these things, and the things he executed in the murder, like they can't find the murder weapon or the clothes he was actually wearing, he disposed of those because that's what the book said to do. Everything else that he...
Is there evidence in those files that he had planned out the murder? Where is he getting that from? I feel like I have missed something. I mean, I know I've been busy and I haven't really got to go through those files yet, but when did it come out that he accumulated all the stuff and planned to make the perfect murder? When was that?
That he held on to, maybe to be disposed of later or to be used in the future. But it strikes me as someone really conducting an experiment of an assignment he gave himself.
Yeah, interesting. And he had that survey.
See, I feel like that's not the case, though, because they found so much stuff that looks terrible, right? Like if you were going to go commit a crime, you wouldn't keep the same items that you would have to go commit that crime again with you all the time, right? Like I wouldn't want, if I stab somebody, I wouldn't want to have a knife at all. I want to be like, I'm not even a knife person. I don't have nothing to do with knives. If like, oh, well, this person was seen in a black mask. Well, I don't have no black mask. I got blue masks. I don't wear black masks. If, whatever shoe print it was, I got completely different shoes now. I went and bought a brand new pair. I'm not ever wearing those kind. Those got burnt in the so they found too much stuff, I feel like, for him to have like had a great plan. I think he planned to get rid of the clothes that he was wearing and the murder weapon and anything right there, scrub himself down, whatever, like I said, in that time before his phone came back on. But I don't feel like he did a great job of getting rid of evidence, or we wouldn't be having these conversations about him right now. There's nothing that says if he would have left his phone at home and left it on and not took it with him, we probably wouldn't have Kohberger as a suspect right now, because they wouldn't have been able to get the warrant to get his DNA to match it to the DNA on the sheath, because there would have been no reason to suspect that he had anything to do with the crimes at the moment. Dolphin 517, his WSU career was imploding. He needed to let off steam, and he killed the dog because he couldn't kill the girl before November 13th. That date meant something to him. Hey, that's possible. November 13th, when we went through the Elliot Rogers manifesto thing, the November of 2013. So November 13th could be an homage to that, you know? Like, obviously, November 13th is different than November 2013. And I feel like people are going to try to point that out when they watch this back later. Like, oh, well, it's 2013, not November 13th. But it's symbolism, you know? It's numerology. It's making the best of the situation that you can. If you can do something on November 13th that your hero, if indeed he was, wanted to do on November of 2013, it would make sense for that. I appreciate the $5. Y'all are really doing that. I really do appreciate that. It's still mind-boggling to me that somebody would just donate money to me, but I really do appreciate it. Do not feel obligated to, because I don't have to have it, but it is appreciated, and it will all go to help this channel, because, you know, any money that goes in, I try to buy something to make the channel better.
At one point, which was like an experiment in its own way. Robin, what do you make that? I'm sort of fascinated by this. The book that they took and some significance to page 118. What do you think that could mean?
That can be absolutely anything, because, and you said it earlier on, when they have the search warrant, they can't seize everything. They got to have a reasonable connection from the seizing agent's perspective of something that could be tied to the crime. And so if you have a book that is used in his field of study, it could be used and highlighted for something he was researching for school. It could also be something he's actually referencing for something he's trying to conduct in his life. It makes it challenging for a search team because it could have a lot of overlap, which is a little unusual, but it could be.
All right. So the book, right? The book was a big point of contention for people. They were flipping out just because I said, hey, in the Elliot Rodgers Manifesto on page 118, this is what it says. So it lines up so much to what happened that that's a hell of a coincidence if it's only a coincidence. And then I said, maybe that's why they didn't have the title of the book and just said book with underlining on page 118, because there is no real title, because it's not really a book. It's a PDF file printed off, right? It's widely available online. It's 143 pages long. You can go click it, download it, and print it off, bind the pages together, and you have a book. So the people who were coping that hard saying, well, it's not a book. Elliot Rodgers Manifesto was never made into a book. It's a 143-page document. If it's all together, even if it's just punched and in a 3-ring binder, nothing's stopping a police officer from saying a book, because it's going to look like a book. It's going to look like, you know, just think about it before you defend something in bad faith like that. Like, just think about that. The fact that there is no title points more in the direction that the book wasn't a book. If that makes sense. That sounds crazy saying it, but it does. It points more in the direction that it's not a legitimate book, or they would have put Where the Red Fern Grows, you know? And the fact that they took it, which is what this guy is saying, is relevant, because that means it had to have some relevance to the case. They couldn't just go in there and just whatever, you know? They took parts of the car to test for DNA and stuff. They took the gloves, the knives, all that stuff, because that's relevant. That could have been used. It could have been could have something on it. It could be a detail that's connected to the case in some way. A random book? Yeah, a random book would be not that interesting unless it had some reason to connect to the case. And then if we go and we find another book that on page 118 has some crazy stuff that's super eerily similar to what happened on November 13th, then it's hard to deny that there might possibly be a connection there. We can't say for sure, but come on. It seems more probable than not. Not just possible, but more probable than not.
Sure.
And it's something, like you said, it has to be relevant. At least they have to think it's relevant to the murder investigation. So that's why I'm so fascinated by that. I wonder what it is. Katie, what do you make of all of this? What are you honing in on when we list out all of the evidence? And as a defense attorney, I mean, it just seems like this guy is getting harder and harder to defend with all of this stuff that continues to come out.
Well, that's absolutely the case. And I think if I was his defense attorney, I would tell him, and again, I believe in the presumption of innocence here, but if he has any hope of avoiding the death penalty, I think that he needs to take a plea deal and express remorse as soon as possible. Any defense attorney is going to look at evidence that sees and any sort of issue with a search warrant because it does have to be proper under the law. There were some pretextual stops here, the traffic stops that are a bit questionable in terms of whether they had proper basis to stop him and collect evidence and DNA that they then use to supplement their affidavits to get these up. Any defense attorney is going to try to see if there's any way to keep some of this evidence out. If they can't, then the next thing you have to do is try to present any other reasonable explanation for why you might have things that seem suspicious, like gloves, black clothing, etc., but maybe have an innocent explanation of some sort. But in this case, with the
Right. Any defense attorney, they're going to try to keep evidence from coming in, right? Because that's going to do more to prove, but that's for the jury. That's not for us general public. For the general public, if it's evidence, if it's real, if it's actually there, whether it's gotten big, like whether the government shouldn't have been able to get it or not, if we know about it, we can't just not know about it anymore, right? You can't just forget that, oh yeah, this happened. The jury cannot be told about it, but the general public still knows it. It doesn't change the fact of if he did it or not. It changes the fact of whether they can prove he did it or not. You still get to have an opinion. You still get to use that. I still get to use that unless it's proven false. It just can't be used in court.
evidence mounting against him and all the physical evidence.
Like that's one thing that it's like a goalpost thing, right? Like nobody should be rooting for Bryan Kohberger if he is guilty to beat the case. If he's guilty, he deserves the worst type of punishment. He deserves, they were talking about bringing back the firing squad in Idaho. I don't know if they did or not. I don't know if they passed that or not. I didn't keep up with it, but that's an insane way to go. And probably what he deserved, that or the electric chair, if he did indeed commit these murders. Because anybody who would do something like that, that's a lot. That's more than, I can't even wrap my mind around it. Like it's hard to wrap your mind around going into a stranger's house and just slaughtering them in their beds while they slept. People with futures, people with lives ahead of them. And the worst thing about the Idaho case is that these victims, these aren't a bunch of spoiled rich kids who were sent to college and were just partying. Yeah, they were partying, they were having a good time, but these are down home, blue collar people. Like Kaylee's family, they're not rich. Maybe they're middle class, they're doing well, but they're not rich people. Xana's family is definitely not rich people. Not so sure about Ethan's family. Maybe they're rich, maybe not. It doesn't change, anything. But just the point that these kids were moving up in life. They were growing to be somebody. And he went in and he took that away. So he deserves the worst punishments. If they bring back the firing squad or the electric chair or whichever one is the most gruesome for him, if he's guilty, is what he deserves. The most suffering possible.
At that, I don't know that there's much fight to be had for the underlying crime.
It's interesting, Katie, you bring up plea deal to avoid the death penalty, but with all of this evidence and one family at least already saying that they want the death penalty, and it seems, at least from what we know, that the prosecution has somewhat of a pretty solid case, why would they even be considering a plea deal? I mean, do you think they would even consider it, Katie?
Well, in terms of a plea deal, I'm not necessarily saying that they would agree to that. It's more a matter of Kohberger trying to mitigate his ultimate sentence. Because if he pleads guilty, whether he has a deal or not, there still has to be a determination whether he gets the death penalty. And if he expresses remorse and there's more of an explanation up front, then that's going to probably be his best shot to avoid the death penalty if that's his goal in all of this. So it's not necessarily.
I don't believe that his narcissism will let him plead guilty. I believe that he thinks that he's always the smartest person in the room based off of the things that we've saw and the testimony that we've heard from the people that are around him. So I think that he believes that he can find a way out of it, whether it's keeping evidence from coming in so the jury can't find him guilty, or whether it's arguing, making up stories and excuses, or trying to explain away the one piece of evidence at a time and keeping other evidence out that completes the loop to hope for the best. I think he believes in his brain, and I think he believes that he's smarter than everybody else, so that he will never. That's why he says eager to be exonerated, right? Exonerated basically means you're guilty and then you're discovered to be innocent. Not guilty. Not guilty is we couldn't prove it. Innocent means you didn't do it. If you're exonerated, it means somebody proved you didn't do it. See what I'm saying? There's a difference between innocent and not guilty.
A deal. It's just a decision to plead guilty, what they call a naked plea, essentially, without any protection, but to do so to get some sort of potential benefit, some sort of leniency in terms of sentencing.
Interesting.
Also, I don't think that they're going to offer him a plea deal. I think if they do, he should probably take it, but I don't see him offering a plea deal that takes the death penalty off the table because they don't seem like they need it. From what we know of already, with the gag order in place, it looks pretty bad for him. You have to, you have to realize that he's going to go to a jury of his peers. They're trying to keep this case local. There's absolutely no way they're going to get a jury locally that doesn't know something about the case. Like in the Alex Murdaugh case, let's bring that back up. One of the jurors' brother was a first responder to the murders. And then that guy was still allowed to be on the jury. Think about that. That's insane.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnation.com to find.
I can't stand her. Let's get rid. Her. Get this laptop over here. They were pressured by the university to make an arrest. They don't have enough. I would like to know why you believe they don't have enough. I mean, they seem like they have a whole lot, like that we know of. They have his phone records showing, like, okay, so circumstantial evidence. Let me go through this real quick one more time. Circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence, it has to all come together to make the totality, to come together as a story so that it lines up, it makes sense. It's unreasonable to believe that there's another version that could be true. If there is another version that could be true, that is reasonable, then they can't find somebody guilty, find him guilty. If all the circumstantial evidence comes together and tells a story, and that story is undeniable, reasonably undeniable, they have to find him guilty. If there's another version that is just as possible, like in the Alex Murdaugh case, where even the prosecution said we can't rule out the two-shooter theory, that's why I say they never proved their case, because they couldn't rule out the other possibility. Now, the jury was the ones that mattered, and apparently they were convinced, and they found him guilty, and I'm sure it'll get appealed and all that, but it's subjective for what evidence they have. And in my opinion, it tells a pretty clear story. You have the behaviors, you have the location. What you have to prove is motive, means, and opportunity. Did he have a motive? It seems that the motive that they're going to be going with in this case is the incel motive, the crime of passion, like Kohberger himself said about the case to his neighbor, that it's a crime of passion, that he had something for one of these girls and they did not return that. So to prove that motive, they're going to bring out the social medias. They're going to show he followed these girls. Well, that's not that big of a deal. Then they're going to show that he liked every post that this girl posted. Well, I mean, simps are simps. That'll happen. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't make him a murderer. Then they're going to say, well, he also ripped the photos from Instagram and saved them to his phone so that he would have them. I don't know why you would do that, because if it's on Instagram, it's on Instagram. Maybe he thought she was going to block him after he messaged her multiple times with no response. But then you find that out, that he messaged the same person that was one of the victims, that he had ripped the pictures off of Instagram to save to his phone, that he liked every post she made. That same person, he messaged them, hey, how are you doing? 7 to 8 times with no responses. Nothing. Maybe she never saw him. Maybe she ignored him. For him, he doesn't know either way. He just knows they were not responded to. And they're making the case for motive, that he had this obsession with her. And that's going to go to justify the motive for them, right? They show the evidence of all that. You'll convince people. If there was a guy blowing my fiance up on Instagram, or if there was a guy and my fiance said, hey, this guy's bothering me, he's creepy, I feel like I wouldn't have anything to say to the guy, right? I wouldn't think anything of it. I'd just be like, yeah, I mean, you're pretty, whatever. But if then he started liking all her posts and trying to message her, it would convince me a lot more that he was trying to talk to her, right? So it would convince you a lot more that there's a connection and there's a reason, because he was rejected, and that's going to be their motive. Then we have the means. Did he have the means to commit this crime? With the way it was committed, would it be possible for him to commit the crime? Yes. Yes, he had the weapons. He has knives. He has guns. He has gloves. He has masks. He has the car that's seen in the thing. Everything lines up there. So yes. Yes, yes, yes. He had the means to commit the crime. And then the opportunity. Did he have an opportunity to commit this crime? Well, we know that he headed in that general direction from his house and then turned off his cell phone. And then the murders took place. And then his cell phone comes back on after the murders had taken place on the other side of town. And then he goes back home. So in that little time frame there, yes, he had opportunity. Now the struggle comes to saying he was there, right? Because Bryan Kohberger doesn't have to prove that he wasn't there. They have to prove that he was there. So they're going to do that with the home videos, the doorbell cameras, whatever in that area, that they've got him in the area. They're going to prove that he was there that way. They're going to get the little black box. They're going to get the little black box from his car, which is going to store information. See, Kohberger didn't think that they would ever get that deep into investigating him if he thought he was getting away with this case. But there's other things that are going to tell a story. And that black box, the GPS data from his car, that's going to tell a story. That's going to tell where it was parked for what amount of time. It's going to tell where it went afterwards, the speed, maybe it's going to be hard to deny if the evidence tells the story that the police want you to believe the evidence tells. We won't know that until we see all the evidence. But from the evidence we have so far, seems legit. Seems like he probably did it. Oh, how long have we been going? An hour and a half? Well, guys, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go and find those documents, and I'm going to see what information that matters to me that I'll feel like talking about from those documents. And when I get that done, I'll come live again and we'll go through those documents and see what they say. I appreciate everybody for stopping by. I appreciate the super chats, super stickers, the subs, everybody who hit the like button. I definitely appreciate that. It helps me out a lot. It pushes the video out for other people can have a chance to see it when others that are watching engage with the video and the topics and like and subscribe and all that. Me grow as a channel and gives me more of a so I appreciate it.